What's up, notJust developers? Welcome back to DEVember. Today is day 10 and the topic of today's video is React Native biometrics, specifically fingerprint and Face ID in order to secure your application. Using the devices fingerprint and Face ID, we can add an extra security layer to our application besides a usual authentication form or authentication flow, or you can also use the Face ID to secure maybe some parts of your application that you want to be secret only to the user, to the owner of a device. So yeah, you can do this in applications where you need extra security, maybe around finances or about private personal data of users. For this, we are going to use Expo Local Authentication, which is a library that allows us to interact with the biometric prompt on Android and Face ID or Touch ID on iOS. It works on Android devices and emulators and also on iOS devices and simulators. We're gonna do that today, but before we jump into the implementation, let me quickly update you about DEVember. DEVember is our month-long marathon of React Native tutorials and where we build 24 separate projects to help you learn and master React Native development. So everything is happening here on YouTube, and if you're not yet subscribed, make sure to hit the red button in order to stay up to date with all the tutorials that we're doing this month and not only. And if you have ideas, feel free to share them to our idea board. You can find the link to it in the description below. And DEVember is not only about learning, it's also about giving back. During DEVember, we are organizing a fundraiser called Education for Children, and during this, we are supporting the efforts of Save the Children organization in providing education, accessible education to children worldwide. If you'd like to support this cause, make sure to donate somewhere here on YouTube. We set it up so that anyone can easily contribute. We also have some incentives for your donations, and I would like to say a big thank you to Rogelio, Sagar, Vale, Travis, and others who already donated. Thank you very much, guys. And yeah, the last thing is that during December, for every 1,000 subscribers, we are also going to donate $100. So by simply subscribing, you are contributing to this. All right, let's get started with today's tutorial. Hello, everyone who is joining it live. Hello, Aditya. Hello, Abatomus. This is my first time on YouTube Live. I'm excited. Let's go. Perfect. Hello, Daniel, Facundo, Rogelio, Vishar. So here is our application. The link to the repository is in the description of the video, and I'm keeping all track of the changes for all the days. So today is day 10. So just clone this repository, switch to the branch day 10 start, and we're gonna have the same source code together. Let's go ahead and see what do we have already. Yesterday was day 9, and yesterday we implemented this authentication flow for signing in and creating an account. But today we're gonna move to day 10, which doesn't have a screen yet. So let's go ahead in our application, days. Let's create a new folder for day 10. We are using Expo Router, and in Expo Router to create a new screen or group of screens, we create a folder and a file will become a screen there. So I'm gonna start with index.tsx, and actually I'm going to take inspiration from previous index, not to have to write it again. I'm only gonna change the description here to Biometrics. Let's use Face ID and fingerprint to unlock the next screens. Fingerprint. And here the title is going to be day 10, Biometrics. When we press on this button, we're going to have to also go to a page that we would like to protect. So we're gonna follow the same structure as previously in the previous day, where we have a group of routes that we want to protect with biometrics. So they will be in our day 10, and the folder will be called protected. Let's go ahead in day 10, create this folder protected. And inside the protected, let's create a index.tsx with a simple component here that will protected screen. Let's export it. Come on. And here, let's say this is private info. This page will contain private information, so only after going through the Face ID recognition, we will be able to get here. But yeah, let's go ahead and see what's going on with page 10. It doesn't seem to load, so probably I'm gonna have to restart our server. Let's run it using npx Expo Run iOS. Hopefully, maybe I don't have to do that because npx Expo Run iOS will rebuild our project, but I didn't add any new dependencies. So usually we only have to rebuild the development client when adding new native dependencies. So yeah, probably I should have just simply started the server. But anyway, let's go through this process together. npx Expo Run iOS will rebuild our project, our iOS directory, and it will run here in a custom development client called DEVember. This is already not Expo Go. What will be the difference in Expo and CLI if we will implement this functionality? If we go, yeah, as I said, we're gonna use Expo local authentication. So here is the documentation, and let's see what will be extra steps for you to take in order to use it in React Native CLI project. Most of the Expo libraries, they are compatible with React Native CLI. For that, you would have to install and set up Expo modules. And after that, you are free to use any kind of Expo packages. So I would imagine that for this library, it's the same. Let's go ahead in the installation. We see that if we're using Expo, it's as simple as this. But if we are installing this in a bare React Native way, oh, come on. If you are installing this in a bare React Native application, which is the React Native CLI, you should also follow these additional instructions. And the additional instructions most probably are here in the README for Expo local authentication. For Expo managed, this is if you're using Expo, that's for us, it redirects us back to the documentation. But for bare React Native projects, you must ensure that you have installed and configured the Expo package before continuing. So follow this guide, install Expo modules in a React Native bare application. To do that, you can use this command and it will automatically install and set up Expo modules. Most of the times it succeeds, sometimes it fails, so there is also some manual installation if the automatic one doesn't work. After you have Expo modules set up, as I said, you can use any Expo application, so go ahead and simply install it. And the only change is that you will have to manually add the this key in your info file that will specify the message when asking for permission for Face ID. That's the difference. Everything else will be the same. So in our case with Expo, setting this up can be done a bit differently, and I'm going to show you in a moment. So as I saw, our application has been rebuilt. Let's go to day 10. Yes, we see day 10. This is the index file of day 10 that displays this markdown. And then we can press on this button at the bottom, go to protected application. That will redirect us to the this is private information. We can also add, I don't know, an icon there or something like that, but that's not the goal of today. Today, we want to actually protect this page with Face ID. As I said, we're going to use Expo local authentication. So let's go to their documentation and see the installation guide. Because again, we are using Expo, the installation will be very easy. We only have to do npx expo install expo local authentication. Let's open with a new terminal. Let's do clear. Let's do this command, and I will also add legacy peer deps flag here because I have previously installed some packages that have different peer dependencies. Now, yes, the package was installed. We can go back to the documentation and see the extra configuration that we have to take. So in our app.json, we need to configure the permission message that will be displayed when the application will ask for Face ID permissions. If we don't do that, iOS will not use Face ID and instead will use the pin code. So what we have to do is in our app.json, add this plugin. Let's go in our folder. Let's go to our app.json. And under plugins, let's go ahead and add a new one for Expo local authentication. Allow product name to use Face ID to unlock secret info, something like that. You'd have to be like to give a reason why you need that, why you need this permission. Yeah, this is the only configurable property, Face ID permission. And in case you're using it in React Native CLI, you're gonna have to do that inside the directly info.plist file. Now we can go ahead and import local authentication, but where will we do that? Again, this is a good to practice to understand how to work with Expo routers, with layout files, and so on. Because yes, the protected screen is this protected index screen. So if we would want to protect only this screen, we might want to use the Face ID here in this screen component. But usually you don't want to protect only one screen. Usually you want to protect a group of screens. So we don't want only this screen, but all the screens that will be inside this protected directory. So in order to apply a logic for a group of screens, we're going to have to define our layout file that will be rendered as a parent of every screen in this directory. So here, let's do export function, export default, biometric, protected layout. A very hard name, but a descriptive one. We are protecting this layout with biometrics. So let's simply return the slot imported from Expo router. This slot simply renders the screen like the child. So if I go now to screen 10, nothing will change. I will still be redirected there, but I think I'll have to simply reload the application after adding this layout, because sometimes it doesn't take effect like automatically. So a simple reload solve the problem, and we are back on this. This is private info. But in this component, in this biometric protected route, we can write code that will be executed when we go on one of the screens from this directory, protected. And to show you, I will simply console log this one, and we see that when we get here, when we navigate to that specific page, we see the console log protected. So that means that if here we're going to add some logic of protection of, hey, if it's not yet authenticated, don't render the slot, because if we don't render the slot and we simply render null, the screens will not be rendered, as you can see. So by conditionally rendering the slot only if the authentication has passed, we can protect all the screens inside this group, inside this directory. Perfect. So let's go ahead and see the API and what methods we have access to. For example, the first one is authenticate async, and this will attempt to authenticate via Fingerprint, Touch ID, or Face ID if available on the device. Apple requires apps to use that uses Face ID to provide the description that we already set here. So that's important. It returns a promise. So yeah, I think we can go ahead and try to use this method, authenticate async. When should that happen? When the component mounts. So in a use effect, we want, in a use effect with an empty dependency array, which will be executed when only the first time this component mounts, not during re-renders. What we're gonna do is, let's declare a function, authenticate, and it's going to be an async function. Now I will simply call this authenticate function. That's a bad design of use effect, that whenever we need an async function, we cannot do it directly in the use effect. We have to create a function and simply call it. A bit weird, but we're gonna go with it. So here what we need to do is first import something from Expo local authentication, and we're gonna import authenticate async. Inside the body of this function, let's do const response equal await authenticate async. Just like that, let's try to go there. Let's try to also console log the response to see what's happening. I'm not sure how it will work on the simulator, but I also have my physical device close to me, so I can check it. Go to protected. We see a possible unhandled promise rejection. Cannot read property authenticate async of undefined. Yes, that means that we install the Expo local authentication. This library contains native code, and because we have a custom development client, we are not using Expo Go. That means that our custom development client doesn't have yet the native code for this package. So all we have to do is rebuild our application, rebuild our native client after adding packages that contain native code. So to do that, I will simply run again npx expo run iOS. Maybe, let's see if this will fix the problem. npm expo run iOS. There is also another method to pre-build and to also clean pre-build. And that option is only like if normally rerunning doesn't work. When you need to completely like destroy the iOS directory and create it from scratch. Hello Alhuda, hello Vishal, Alejandro, how are you doing guys? Great class, thank you very much. By the way, if you are still using Expo Go, then the Expo local authentication should be part of Expo Go, so you wouldn't have this problem. But as you can see, I simply rebuilt it. It took not a lot of time, and now I can go to day 10, go to protected application, and we see the enter iPhone passcode for DEVember. Just like that, and I can open the keyboard and write the password here. And then we are in the protected. Let's see what response we got. Response error null, success true, warning, Face ID is available but has not been configured. To enable Face ID, provide NS Face ID user description. That's a bit weird. What we see here is that iOS doesn't see the configuration of Face ID string that we set up here in the plugins Expo local authentication. We set this Face ID permission, and as we read in the documentation, without this, iOS will not use Face ID, will fall back to the password. And actually we see this warning in the response as well. So that means that what we set here in app.json was not updated inside our native folder iOS DEVember info here. I can even check that. Secret. Yeah, I wrote there something with secret and I don't see it here. So in this situation, That means that the application was rebuilt, but it didn't update everything. So what we can simply do is we can run a clean pre-build. A clean pre-build we can do that with npx expo pre-build. And if we provide the -- clean, that will first remove iOS directory. You will see now it's removed. And then it will pre-build both iOS and Android from scratch. Yeah, I have some issues with this npm because I always need to add the legacy pure dependency. Maybe I can add it to the configuration so that it will always be applied. That would also work. Another option would be to simply rerun this again and it will work, but I want to fix it not to see an error again. So npm legacy pure deps config. I want to set it through configuration. I need to do that with, I think with a file. There is a location. Let's try to add this npm rc file in the root of our directory. Come on, no. New file, npm rc. And let's add legacy pure deps as true in order for this to always be set when using npm. So now let's try again the npx expo pre-build clean. Would you like to proceed? Yes. Stuart, hello, how are you doing? To save data locally on the application, you could use async storage or Expo secure store. So yeah, let's wait for the native side projects to be rebuilt. And that happened, and now I can do npx expo run iOS, which is actually planning a build. Not sure, maybe I should simply start the server without having to go through this build again, because we just pre-built it. Sunny morning in Cape Breton. Is that UK? Yes, mmkv is also a great library that you can use for saving data locally on the device. Hello, Aditya. For everyone who is joining now, if it's confusing that I'm waiting for some installation, let me quickly update. So today we are building, we are securing our application with Biometrics, which means Touch ID, Face ID, or Fingerprint on Android. So what we want to do is protect a screen only after the user passes the biometric check. This can be useful when adding extra security to your application or to some parts of your application. By adding the legacy deps, does this fix the run Android? Yeah, because if the problem that was specifying there was related to npm, then yeah, it should. Any plan to add MFA in the last session? What kind of MFA? So we see that the application has completely been rebuilt and it asks us to open in a new application. Weird that I have now two of them, but I'm gonna use the latest. And here we have it. Let's go to day 10. And now I either expect to see the Face ID, or if it's not available on the emulator, I at least expect not to see that warning about Face ID not being initialized. So let's go to protected app. we see this authenticate. If I'm gonna write something, done, we see error null, success true, and warning null, which means that there is no warning. The Face ID is there, but it's not the user has not enrolled into Face ID. So there is something here. So the response.success true. Now so far we simply invoke this authenticate async, but we actually do not protect the slot. We do not protect the screens. Let's go ahead and add here a state variable, unlocked, set unlocked is going to be equal use state, and initially it's going to be false. Now, if the screen is not unlocked, if we haven't yet passed the verification, I want to return something, I don't know, a text, use Face ID to unlock, something like that. This text should be imported from React Native. And only after unlock is true, I will go and render the screens that I'm protecting. But we need to set it back to true. So when is that going to happen? Only if the response from this function has a success message true, only then I'm going to set unlocked to true. And only then our screen should pass the user to the next step. Because now done. Let's see what's happening there. Go to protected app. If I cancel, I do not see the protected screen. I see this text, use Face ID to unlock. Perfect. That's good so far. I also want to allow the user to actually press on this to press on this button to trigger the Face ID scan, the Face ID pop-up. Because sometimes, you might fail to do it, or you might press cancel and you want to do it again. And if the application doesn't have a button to trigger like the authentication method, you'd always have to close the application and open it again, which is not the best user experience. So here, if it's unlocked, let's actually, I don't know, add some content on the screen. View. We have a text. And I can also use, I can also use an Expo icon. Let's see, Expo icon. Face ID. Not Facebook. I need some icon for Face ID. Face recognition. Fingerprint. Yes, this one. Let's use the one from font Awesome 5 named Fingerprint. So first I'm going to import the icon at the top, and then I'm going to render this one. I'm going to render it after this text. If I press cancel, I'm going to see it there. And let's add some style to this view. Flex 1, align items center, justify content center. Yep, 24, maybe even more, like a 40, and a gray color. For the text, let's go with some font family. So we have a text, we have an icon. What we can do is when we press on this icon, we want to again trigger the same authenticate method. So for that reason, let's go ahead and extract this from useEffect inside the body of our function in order to have access to it from other parts, from our component as well. So when we press on the icon, on press, I want to call authenticate. So now if I go to this screen and for some reason I cancel, I can press again on this one to trigger it again. So now I can basically write the password, press done, and I'm going to be redirected to the next screen. This is private info. Probably I'm gonna use background color, let's do white. Let me use the same structure for the index screen that I have here. Protected index. Instead of a normal view, I'm gonna add protected info. Let's import font awesome from Expo Vector icons. I'm not gonna have a one press, and the icon is going to be, I don't know, I don't know, something like a lock. If I'm gonna simply do here lock, go there, done. Yes, it works. Protected information. So just like that, we have protected our screen with biometrics. So far, we see how it works here with a PIN code, and that's because even though the device has access to Face ID, has the Face ID sensor, the user has not enrolled into Face ID. Because if I'm gonna run the same application on my device, and let's try to actually do that, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna connect my device here, and I will have to execute npx expo run iOS -- device in order for me to select the device I want to run on. And because I have my physical device connected, I can select it from here, and the application is going to be built and run on my physical device. After that happens, we're gonna see how on my physical device I can use Face ID as well, not only the PIN here. But while that is happening, let's look through the documentation of local authenticate to see what other functions do we have. For example, on Android, we can also cancel authentication. I'm not sure we want to do that. Get enrolled level async. This is important. This determines what kind of authentication is enrolled on the device. There is a difference between an enrolled security level and the available security level. Available will be true as long as the phone has a physical fingerprint or Face ID. But if the user hasn't set them up, hasn't enabled them, then they will not be in the enrolled array. So we can have there is additional methods here to check if there is at least one of them or which one are supported. Yes, this one supported. So let's check two things: the supported authentication types async and the available. I'm gonna do that here in the useEffect. Let's, instead of importing separate functions, we're gonna work with a lot of them. Let's import everything as local authentication. I'm gonna do local authentication dot authenticate async. But besides that, I will also want to do, before this, let's go ahead and check await local authentication dot get enroll level async. And also another one for get or supported authentication types async. And we can go ahead and console log them. But the first one, I'm gonna console log the supported. Let's open it up, and if I go here and press on the authenticate, and in the first console log, I'm gonna see there enrolled ID 1, supported ID 2. So get enrolled level async. What is that going to give us? Determine what kind of authentication is enrolled on the device. And it's not an array, it's only a value. Probably the one with higher security. And as we can see, it's a simple number, 1 and 2 and so on. And these numbers are a map, and if we scroll down, we will see that in the enumeration, authentication type, the one with 1 is a fingerprint, with 2 is a facial recognition, and with 3 is iris, only available on Android. Security level as well. 0 is no security level, 1 indicates that it's a PIN or a pattern, and 2, it indicates that it's a biometric authentication. So the security level is for the second call. Supported authentication types. Get enrolled. Authentication types. Yeah, this is 1 or 2. Device can support multiple methods. 1 is for PIN, the 2 is for biometrics. All right, anyway, I have it. I have it here on my physical device. Let me display you the screen of my device. And if I'm gonna go to day 10, and if I'm gonna go there, it will ask us to allow DEVember to use FaceID to unlock secret info. So this, if you recognize it, is the same text that we set up in app.json. Let's give it access. And why did it show for a second? Wait a second. Yeah, as you saw, when I did that, it opened the Face ID, and I'm now unprotected. If I go back and go back here, it shows Face ID. If I'm going to cover up my Face ID, my camera, and try that, the Face ID will fail. I'm covering it up. And we will be prompted with a password. You don't see it because I think this is a security measure of iOS, but it's an actual like pin code keyboard here on my device. So if I do it wrong, yes, it doesn't allow. Perfect. So now I can go back, use Face ID, and then and only then I'm landed here on the protected information. Perfect. Anyway, this is the basics of biometrics. I think with this information you can simply add biometric support or authentication to your application. Something to keep in mind is in cases where the application is run on devices that do not have a physical a fingerprint or a Face ID. In that situation, you can determine that using the has hardware async. So if it's false, we can do const has hardware equal await has hardware. Now it's going to be definitely true. So console log has hardware. So we see has hardware is true, but on some devices that is going to be false, and calling this authenticate async will give us an error. So we need to decide what do we want to do in that situation when has hardware is false. What should happen here? I can do now an alert not supported. But do we want to give them access to the next screens? I don't know. That depends on the business requirements. But if you don't want to give access, you will never set the unlock to true. If you want, we're going to say like not supported, but we will unlock the screen because we cannot authenticate this way. Maybe in that situation, you try to authenticate in another way, maybe with a PIN or something like that. But anyway, you need to keep that in mind that some devices will not have a hardware facial recognition or fingerprint. All right. Another thing that maybe you will need is a way to kind of remember that the user has already passed the authentication. Because right now, as long as we will be inside this protected folder, for example, if I'm going to add here another second.tsx, let's do recnate. Let's simply take what we have in the index. More protected. So if from index I'm going to have a simple link next page with href day10/protected/second. Now I will be prompted with a biometric authentication only when entering this protected layout. So if I go to this protected, I'm going to enter the password. I'm going to be here. And then while I'm here, I'm not going to actually, this one should be in the index. And while I'm on these screens, let me import it, come on. This one is previous. What I wanted to say is that we will only be asked for our biometric identification only when getting on this group of screens. Because after that, when we navigate from one screen to another, we are not going to be required again to authenticate. However, if we go back from that layout and when we come to those screen again, we will again be asked that because the layout will be recreated. The screen will unmount when we leave this group and will be back mounted when we come back here. So sometimes maybe that's the desired outcome. Maybe you want to make sure that every time the user will go there, he will be asked for the Face ID. But in some situation, you want to ask him only once as he's using the application. And if he unlocked it once, as long as the application is still running, you can assume that it's the same user, so you can give him permission to see that screen. How can we do that? To manage that, we would need to extract our state variable that keeps the information about the unlocked or if it's unlocked or not. We have to extract the state variable from this layout to a component above that will not be unmounted when we leave there. Usually that should happen in the root layout. The root layout will never be unmounted unless you close the application. So we need somewhere here to save this state. what we could use is a React context, and that will allow us to have global data, and the unlocked will be stored in a separate component, and our layout will simply consume it, and if it will once be changed to true, it will remain true as long as the application is still running. So what we can do here is we can go and create a React context. Let's do that inside our components. Let's create, it's not actually a component, but I don't want to create a lot of folders. So let's just do components day 10. And in day 10, let's create Biometrics provider.tsx. Now we have this component. It will need to contain a React context. A React context is created using the create context function imported from React. A React context is great for providing global state. So what we have to do is first we need to create this context. Let's call it Biometrics context is equal to create context. I think it should be empty object initially. Now, this biometric context will have a provider and a consumer. A provider provides the data and a consumer will receive it and consume it, use it. So let's go ahead and create a component that will render the biometrics context provider. So the component is a simple React component, biometrics provider is equal to a simple component that will render the biometrics context dot provider. And using the provider, we can export through this value property different state variables or even callback functions from here. And this value will be available to all the children inside this biometric context, no matter the depth. If it's a child of this provider, biometrics context provider, then through the consumer, it will be able to access this value. And the value can be is unlocked, for example. I will initialize it with false. Again, in order for our components to have access to this value, they should be part of a children. Well, we want the whole application to be part of a children. Let's make this component a little bit more abstract and receive the children through properties and render them here. Children. They will be received through properties, children, and the type can be props with children. Now, where are these children coming from? Let's first export default our component and render it inside our root layout, in the layout that will wrap around our whole application. So if we simply go ahead and around here, maybe authenticator, yeah, maybe here, biometric provider. If we wrap our whole application inside this biometric provider, they become the children property of our biometric provider component. And if we look at the implementation of this component, the children will be wrapped inside the biometric context. That means that now every screen will have access to this is unlocked value by consuming this context. We consume a context using a hook called useContext. We can use this useContext hook in our components by simply putting them together, useContext and passing this create context. But for that, we will always have to import two things, useContext and biometric context. I'm going to show you a simple shortcut that you can use to have a shortcut to this biometric context. That shortcut is creating a custom hook called use biometrics. Let's call it use biometrics. And this is going to be a custom hook that when executed will return a, will call the use context by specifying this one. So it's a simple, this one is a simple shortcut to this use context biometric context. And if I export it, I can go in the, for example, layout here, and instead of taking this from use state, the unlock, we can take it from const unlocked equal use biometrics that automatically is being imported from our file that we just created, use biometrics. So now this unlocked can be used globally, and when updating it, it will, and when we leave this layout, the context provider will still be mounted and will have this value. But now we also need to move the logic of storing and maybe even the logic of updating to the context provider. So this state that we have here will not be here anymore. It's going to be part of our provider. This is a state. Use state, let's import it from React. When we export it, let's actually use is unlocked and set is unlocked. When we export it, we are going to export this value. And potentially we can also export this setter if we want to update it from outside. I would say that a better solution would be to not export the setter because this is something related to security. And this way you will not allow any other components to update this value, and instead move the logic of asking or authenticating with local authentication from our screen to our biometric provider. The function will be the authenticate. Let's take it from here and let's move it to the biometric provider. We need to import local authentication in our provider like this. We also need this alert, and in the set unlocked is going to be set is unlocked. We updated the name. Now this function authenticate we can export from our provider in order to allow other components to trigger the authentication process. Now back in our layout, besides the unlocked, we will also import the authenticate, because when we get on our layout, only then we want to call this authenticate method. Because if we would copy paste this one in our provider, the authenticate will be triggered as soon as the provider mounts, which means that as soon as the application is loaded. We don't want that. We want only in specific situations. So that's why we would rather expose this authenticate function that other components can call on demand. But now, again, this unlocked is coming from a provider. And if I would go through the authentication and go to protected application, go first to set it to true. Unlocked, it shouldn't be unlocked, it should be is unlocked, sorry, is unlocked. Let's check it with is unlocked here, and that's it. That's what happens when we don't type our context providers and so on, but I can show you in a moment how we can do that as well. So go to protected application. First time we do the biometrics, we can navigate those pages. I can go back, and if I go back on that screen, I expect not to see this, but I actually see it. Yes, because we call authenticate when we get on this screen. We should call authenticate when we get on this screen, but only if it's not already unlocked. So don't call it the second time, only the first time. Let's try it again. I'm gonna authenticate, go back, go to protected, and I'm still here. Maybe I need to reload the application. DEVember, let's try. Go to 10, go to protected. If is unlocked, no, if it's not unlocked, sorry guys, if it's not unlocked, authenticate. Yes, now I see it, I can press done, I can go back, and the second time I see the protected info automatically without being asked the second time, because the is unlocked is stored globally in a React provider that is not being unmounted when we leave this group of screens. So this way you can add some, let's say, a memorization of this step in order not to ask the user multiple times before he enters this gate. In a way, you are remembering that the gate is open and he can pass and see those screens. You can also add additional things like the time when it was unlocked, and you can check if it's more than 5 minutes or if it's more than 10 minutes, you would ask him to authenticate again. But that would be extra, and yeah, it depends on the security measures that you want to set on your application. With this, I hope you can understand how you can manage the logic of authenticating and of whether it's authenticated or not on a higher level, on a more global level, through a React context provider. And as I said, this is working, but we haven't specified the type for this context, and when we are using it, it doesn't know if it has the is unlocked. When we don't type properly our data, we get into a situation as previously when I had here unlocked instead of is unlocked. So let's go ahead and create here a type for biometrics context. It can have the same name as a variable. A type can have the same name as a variable, and we can type here what data it will have. Let's look in the value. It will have this is unlocked, which is unlocked, which is a boolean, and it will have this authenticate, which is an async function that returns void. Is it like this? Yeah. Now we can use this type to specify that, hey, create a context with this biometric context type. It sees that we are trying to initialize it with values that does not follow this type, so we can do here default values. We can say that is unlocked will be initialized with false, and the authenticate method will be initialized with an empty function that will not do anything. Then these functions will be defined in the provider, and when passed through the value, they will already have the actual value of our function. I think it should be async here, or it should return a promise of type void. Yes. Async. Yes, now it's better because our authenticate is actually an async function. So yeah, we properly typed it that it's async, it returns a promise. And in the layout, now if I would have that previous error with a wrong name for the variable, TypeScript will tell me and I can see it and go back. And for authenticate is as well like a function, a promise, which, yes, perfect. So with that, we have our biometrics implemented in our application. We can also see it here with FaceID. Come on. Yes, here is our device. If I'm gonna go to day 10, biometrics, go to protected route, we're going to be asked for our password. I'll try again for Face ID. It saw me, and I can go back. I can go back to protected, and I can see the protected information. All right, perfect. That was the tutorial for today. Oh, we managed to do it in 1 hour. Perfect. So, did you enjoy it? Did you find it valuable, guys? Let me know in the comments, in the live chat. Rosan Dami, I am new here, and Aditya Brother suggest me. This is awesome. Thank you very much, and thank you, Aditya, for recommending the channel. Appreciate that. I'd appreciate if you could do a video for file image uploading with MongoDB and React Native. Make sure to submit it on our idea board, and if it receives votes, if others are interested, we can do it. Sir, I'm concerned about the growth of Flutter market over React Native. Why is that concerning to you personally? Do you, I don't know, own React Native? Do you have equity in Facebook and you're afraid that Facebook might go down? I don't know. It shouldn't be. If a technology has a lot of, let's say, usage, that doesn't mean that the other one does not. It doesn't take it from there. Look at the React Native and Expo being used out there in most of applications from top 100 list. So yeah, you'll see that a lot of companies, a lot of big companies are betting on React Native. Stuart, thank you very much. Rogelio, super outstanding. Thank you, appreciate that. Abba Toms, this is really great. I love it. Thank you. Thank you very much. And if I remember correctly, you said that this is the first time on YouTube Live. You're welcome here. Happy that you stayed till the end. How about drawing using React Native Skia? That's something that I would like to try during this DEVember. Does Expo have in-app update? Yes, you can do over-the-air update if that's what you're asking. You can do that using EAS update. All right, guys, so that was the tutorial. This is DEVember day 10. We still have 14 more projects to go. So if you're interested in that, make sure to subscribe to the channel and maybe share this video with some of your peers, some of your friends on social media. That would help us a lot to reach more developers and help even more. All right, thank you very much. I'm going to see you tomorrow with another tutorial. And yeah, take care.